GupShup with Gurpreet Sarin.
What's going on? Welcome to another episode of GupShup with Gurpreet Sarin. I'm Gurpreet Sarin. This week's episode, we have an awesome artist for you, Daniel Roberts.
Hello. Nice to see you, Gurpreet.
Good to see you, Daniel. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Glad to be here. Excited to be on the podcast.
I'm glad to have you. It's a pleasure.
Yes.
One thing you'll notice about Daniel when he stands up is that he's very tall.
I am. Should I stand up for everybody?
No, because then you're only going to be able to see up to your belly button.
Right.
And then they're going to think I'm talking to Haggard the Giant.
Yeah, I'll just shove. Yeah, and it'll only be like the wrong part of my body will be.
And I will get flagged and I go to jail.
It'll be just terrible, and I
that'll
will
be the
feel
end.
uncomfortable. And
So
the
let-
podcast will be over before it started. Anyway, please continue.
Honestly, that's the goal. The goal is to end the podcast before it starts. How often do you get how tall you are? Like, do people, like, I'm sure you have, like,
Sorry.
no, you're
Keep
good. I'm sure, like, at some point, you've gotten super sick and tired of people telling you how tall you are.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. So I mean, you know, how tall are you? Did you play basketball? Blah blah blah. No,
Yeah.
I suck at sports and basketball and everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's various approaches that I've heard people take. The one I have done is I'm not sure. How short are you?
Oh, man.
And
Oh,
then
man.
and that's only when I'm really being mean. But I have heard of another guy who had the same experience in my mom's generation.
Okay.
He got really bad. He went way past the line.
Okay.
So people would say, "How's the weather up there?"
Oh, yeah, that's a classic one. Yeah.
Yeah, and he would spit on them and say, "It's raining."
Oh, wow.
He got really mad.
That's wild.
It was very cruel of him, but also darkly funny.
Yeah, I have a waterproof turban, so I would not be able to worry about the rain of
Wow.
you spitting down on me. So
That's good.
Daniel, we met at UMBC.
We did.
We were doing music together. Daniel is an amazing guitar player and musician. Do you remember the first jam session that we had together?
I remember the first time I remember ever getting to hear you play or play together a little bit was, I remember hearing you play in my brother's dorm room.
Yes.
And then I
yes,
don't know if
correct.
we actually, I don't think I had a guitar at the same time or not. I don't think I did. And then the first time, the main thing I remember after that was having you and some of your siblings come over and
Yes.
play at our house.
Yes, that is correct.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my God. So one thing about Daniel is that his family is all very musically talented, and so is my family. We're very
Yes.
musically inclined. So it was one cool thing to see when I met your brother Luke. It was like, wow, he's just like me, but the white version. And you come through like super tall, super nice, super talented.
Yeah.
And I was like very honored to be able to perform
Man,
with you.
oh, it was all the other way. Seriously, it was like you guys were fantastic.
I'm
So
glad
it was,
to hear
It
that.
was just a lot of fun.
And most recently, I know you had the chance, you were working on a really cool podcast, and you invited me, so it was an honor for me to appear on your podcast.
Thanks.
And we also jammed together. So one thing that I love to do is like fuse this Eastern and Western music.
right.
And Daniel is obviously such a talented musician that he picked up like Indian classical music super quickly, and now he's like a professional at it.
That's overly kind, but thank you. Yeah, I can fake it decently well, but there's a lot of things that I can't do yet. I think I loved what we did. I'm still in awe of.
Seriously, his
you
tickets
guys.
are selling for $1,000, where he's performing with Zakir Hussain.
Yes. Yeah, that's next week actually. But I wasn't gonna tell any. That's a secret, man.
And how do you plan to promote yourself if it's gonna be a secret? Tell me more about your podcast, Unmake My Enemy. Yeah, tell me
Yes.
more about that one.
So the premise is I'm a former non-denom evangelical Christian who's very committed.
Yes.
And what I think I learned after leaving that was that I think that all humans have this tendency, but I was taught to create enemies when I thought I was loving them. Right, so when I went to college,
Yeah,
UMBC.
yeah.
I was freshman year. I was gonna like turn the whole campus Christian. I was on a mission, man.
Wow.
Right,
Yeah,
but then when that slowly changed, I realized I learned to be able to see from the other perspective of how damaging a lot of the beliefs that I held were to other people too. Right, and I was making other people into my enemy. That it was actually to some degree a choice of my own.
Sure.
Right, and that the evangelicals are an easy target to see that, but I think that everybody, all humanity does that, right? So I make myself, I could say that I'm an easy target, but then let's let's see if I can try to undo that process, right?
Okay.
And what's the best way to do that? Well, it's not going to be rational, because as soon as you start to have an argument with somebody, everybody like takes their sides and defends their tribe and their sense of their identity.
Absolutely, yeah.
But if you do a creative thing where you just try to see who the other person is and make something beautiful that you value and you feel associated in a meaningful way with, like some kind of art, then you get past all that crap and you have something you hold on to that's like, oh man, I want to be friends with and value and become like these people who I thought maybe I would fear.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So I'm starting with just people that I know that I respect and are different in some way from me, either on the surface or in a deeper way, and trying to make some creative thing that's beautiful with them. And then whatever the music we create is based on, some kind of song or some approach to music that's meaningful to them, right?
Nice.
So a lot of people will come in with either their original song or with a cover that really means something to them.
Yeah.
And I'll talk with them in advance about like why is it meaningful in particular to them. And then we'll do the collaboration, and we use the song as an entry point into who the other person is and what they care about.
That's awesome. I often, when I first started playing music myself, I very quickly recognized the sort of universality, right, that comes from something like music, and art is a universal sort of source of inspiration. Tell me more about the cultural influences that go into your music and sort of how that allows you to shape your artistry and then the people you connect with and then the sort of like art that you produce.
Gosh, well, there's a lot of things that are a little tricky. I think, I grew up in church, so probably to a degree that I don't even like, sort of like bad white CCM church music still had some effect, the effect.
I never grew up in a church, so I have no idea what that is.
CCM is Christian contemporary music.
Okay.
So anyway, there's a lot of like, it's sort of cheesy, the pop version of this stuff, it's like, it's canned and just like a lot of other pop stuff.
Right.
So that was there because I played it a lot. But I think it's very hard to point out a lot of things. It's a little bit awkward, especially if you're a white dude and you want to be like respectful. And
of other cultures,
generally speaking,
genres,
you find yourself identifying like I do with more liberal leaning kind of groups of people.
Okay.
Though actually, honestly, I think there's a lot to be learned and respected in both sides. I've kind of lived on both sides, so it's not, I don't go hard one way or the other.
Okay.
But like things like cultural appropriation can be a little interesting.
Man.
So I'll give you an example of this.
Give me an example.
I think a lot of music that I really respond to is at least the kind of attitude and energy from it comes from things like the blues and then blues and jazz and funk and or at least initially and rock and stuff. Where did all of that come from in America? Well, there was. There's lots of influences. Obviously, there are plenty of white people that basically, there's the extension of the Western classical musical tradition from Europe. But really, the heart and soul of American music came starting in like Congo Square because, terrible white people had slaves and took them from Africa.
As politically correct as you can be.
So basically, a lot of the time, what I often end up feeling is to a very significant degree, maybe the most fundamental kind of sense of American music is that the soul of America is black. Is almost how I feel.
The soul of America is black.
Right. It's not really that case. It's actually it's a mix of a lot of things. But if you think about what music do you associate with like being very quote unquote American as in the USA.
Okay.
Well, there was Congo Square, and then there was the blues, right? Which then went on to jazz, which turned into like funk, and sorry, the blues turned into rock, which then turned, and then there was funk, and there was jazz, right?
R&B,
all of that,
and then
yes,
hip-hop.
So all of that stuff, and now hip hop, right?
Yeah.
So all of that was first created from the various black communities, often communities having a lot of struggle.
Yeah.
Right, and then. After it becomes a thing, because you feel all that power and emotion and the struggle in it, other people find that to be just, like really meaningful, and they latch onto it.
Of course,
so
of course.
I'm one of the white dudes who like loves a lot of that too, right? I don't even know that that's where it came from a lot of the time, but I'll find weird moments where like if I get to play with a group of musicians, that are like primarily from that tradition, I sometimes feel way more comfortable with them,
of course,
than my from any of those traditions. That's not one tradition, obviously, but I often feel way more comfortable there than if I'm playing like with a basic, like a white rock band or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just it's just like there's something. There's a kind of energy and attitude there.
There's like a bond and a connection.
Yeah, it was so weird to me to feel any connection there because I thought I shouldn't.
Yeah.
I just loved the stuff, but I
You're
shouldn't.
different, but you want to belong. Yeah.
Honestly, a lot of the music that I love really came from that tradition, and I think it's the case for a lot of people.
Daniel, take us back to young Daniel.
Yeah.
And when you first started playing guitar, was guitar the first instrument that you learned?
Yeah.
So take us back to like how you felt when you started playing guitar originally, and like how you got started, who your instructor was, because you obviously have gone really far and like you're very, very good now. But everyone starts from somewhere.
Yeah.
So do you recall like when you first started off with guitar and like what you were like? Yeah.
I was 5 years old.
Okay.
And my dad took me to Chuck Levin's Washington Music Center. Wow. We got a Yamaha Pacifica guitar, which is still around at my house.
Yeah.
And I remember somehow, I remember the guitar being purchased, like holding it in the air.
Oh my God, yeah.
But, and then coming home and thinking I was pretty awesome, then naturally talented, because when I plugged in, I just played just all downstrokes and one finger.
A gift from God.
And I just, and my parents, yay. But for me, it's just like, oh, this is so cool. I can play an open string and then press down a note and it changes.
And really quickly, I'm glad that we're talking about guitar, because if someone were to mute the audio, they would think you're playing a very different instrument that is a part of your body. So let's just clarify that he's playing the guitar instrument.
Yes. Does it look like I'm playing my crotch?
Yeah. It's a different instrument.
I'll do it like this.
There we
How's
go.
that?
Yeah, guitar.
That's better. You consider that to be an instrument? That is, I guess that is.
It's a tool of a different kind.
Wow. This is a special podcast. Anyway, a tool of a different.
This is true.
Anyway, guitar. Sorry. Here you go. Guitar.
Beautiful,
I'm playing a guitar,
so
not a different instrument.
5-year-old Daniel gets a Yamaha from his father or parents.
That's right.
Playing originally.
Yeah.
Did you start off with classes originally, or like what is?
So my dad, I wanted to play guitar because my dad was a guitarist.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so like I would open up if I got to ever, excuse me, to see his guitar, his acoustic guitar. You open up the case, and it would smell really great, and it had all of the and it sounded cool. So and it's dad playing guitar. So when you're 5, dad is the coolest cat everywhere, anywhere. So
yeah.
Anyway, so that was kind of the starting point. My dad would give me a little bit of pointers, and he gave me taught me to play a scale first.
Okay.
Instead of chords.
Oh wow.
And then just had a bunch of stuff around for me to play. But then I just hung around musicians. I didn't take a formal lesson until I was a senior in high school, just trying to apply for college, music schools.
Yeah. Wow, that is crazy. So you learned scales first. Mm-hmm. So with Indian classical music, which is kind of where I grew up, there isn't that much focus on theory. Mm-hmm. A lot of it comes down to like spontaneity, and you sort of like improvise.
Yeah.
But when I was introduced to American music, I realized that like 99% of songs on the radio are a very simple chord progression. There's like a G, D, E minor, and C or something. But you have like a theoretical understanding. I remember when we jammed, you talked about like the Lydian and Mixolydian and all these different weird, really cool scales. I'm sure I mispronounced half of them.
No, you said all of them correctly.
Apothecary, a quadratic, something. I don't.
Yeah, the apothecary. Yeah.
My favorite too. My favorite too.
Yes.
Did you? So I know you mentioned in your background you started off with like church music.
Yeah.
When did you start experimenting with genres like blues or jazz or like R&B?
Yeah.
How did that come across?
Well, all the music my dad had was not. A lot of it was not boring church music. I mean, we played in church, and it was actually a big deal for us. But it was. Chick Corea was just as big a deal in the house as anything else. So and early, I got my first guitar when I was 5, but I didn't take it seriously until I was 11-ish, 11 or 12.
Okay.
And it was Danny Gatton, who was famous. He was locally famous in D.C. He was nicknamed the Humbler. So he had issues. He never made it huge, but he had an album called 88 Elmira Street. Mm-hmm. And as soon as that first track played, I was like, this is the gateway drug.
Oh my God, that's wild. You were hooked.
I was hooked, man. Yeah. And that was old school sort of rock and roll and boogie mixed with a little bit of a sense of, jazz and just some crazy technique,
Yeah.
you know. And that led then to Eric Johnson. Steve Morse and Eric Johnson.
Okay.
Steve Morse is kind of like progressive rock-ish,
Okay.
weird mix of a lot of stuff. Like, I don't know, he had a band called the Dixie Dregs. That album was there was a live album that I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
And then it was Eric Johnson. Eric Johnson has a very rich harmonic vocabulary.
Okay.
So he's a guitarist from Austin, Texas, rock guitarist, but plays way more chords and they're way richer and interesting.
Okay.
And I was just obsessed with him for like the longest period of time of any guitarist.
Yeah.
And then through high school was into jazz. So that was started with like fusion really.
Okay,
So
okay.
people like Mike Stern, Larry Carlton, what's his name?
Gurpreet Sarin.
Lee Ritenour.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
gosh,
then
he's a fusion artist.
and then acoustic guitarists, Michael Hedges, and everybody who came after him.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Everybody, there's too many people, obviously, to know all of them, but basically that whole tradition. And then when I went to school for music, that was when I really got strictly into trying to play jazz. Or just so I started with a guy named Steve Abshire, who actually taught at the private school I was a part of, or Umbrella Group. That's a whole other interesting thing. But he was a great like traditional jazz guitarist in the style of like Herb Ellis and Joe Pass and those guys.
Yeah.
So studied with him for a little bit. That's how I got into playing, into music school.
Yeah.
And then studied jazz and classical in music school.
So music school in college. Talk to me through your mindset when you applied for music school. What was like the first thing that you noticed that was like a big shock to you? Like, wow, I was not expecting to have to learn this kind of stuff. Or I don't know if I'm interested or comfortable in this. What were some things like when you got into music school that you just you had no idea you'd have to start learning this and you were kind of freaked out, excited, but just like, wow, why am I learning this?
Yeah. So there was nothing that was freaky exactly. The closest, by the time I got to music school, I felt really bored with my own playing and I wanted to find a way to expand. So getting to be in a music theory class where I learned how to define new sounds and think systematically about what I was playing was like this, like the heavens were open, right? Because I could intentionally stop playing whenever I wanted. I could play something new and interesting.
That's awesome,
right? So for most people, think theory is boring or whatever, but I was just like, my God, this is the answer.
Like
why doesn't everyone love this?
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. Oh my God.
I was at UMBC, which does have a strong, they call it quote new music tradition or focus, which basically is everything from largely influenced by John Cage and the quote New York school. So in the '60s there was this kind of almost rejection of tonality. Right. Basically people felt that there was like a lot of snobby composer types at least, or the people who were bored anyway, thought that basically tonality was on its way out. Wagner was kind of the last straw. He was finding his way out of tonality and playing all the wrong chords. And then it was like, well, you had people like, Alban Berg who were decided, or who was the first person to do a 12-tone row? It wasn't Berg. It'll come to me. But anyway, composers were like, screw tonality. There's 12 notes in an octave. I will make a quote 12-tone row based on some intervals, and I just have to use up all of these 12 notes somehow, and then they will repeat, and I will then apply the approaches of the standard kind of composition approaches that people have used before in some respects with that, but because it's not even quote tonal, it's not in a key or anything. It would it totally changed how you heard everything. It got really disjunct and crazy and dissonant. And
oh my God, do you still collaborate with, or did you make any connections with some artists in music school that like was an awesome connection, and you work with them nowadays?
No, not really. The closest thing, I had a friend who was a bass player named Hunter Schaefer.
Awesome name.
Yeah. So he was anyway, cool dude. He sort of fell into playing with this Baltimore band that was like an indie rock band. That was an interesting other part of my life. So I went and saw a show there, joined that band.
Yeah,
and that led to some other things. There's a guy named Dan Strauch who was the lead singer of that band. He now works with a studio in DC.
Yeah.
And so he and I still work together.
Nice.
Hunter and I haven't talked in a long time, but
so in this podcast, my goal is to find Hunter and reconnect you guys, and then maybe hopefully make sure that y'all can connect it, make some amazing music, just amazing music.
I mean, honestly, probably in a lot of ways, you are the most exciting musical find at UMBC.
This is wild. I did go to UMBC. So my previous guest actually also went to UMBC. And so we spent, the entire podcast was basically sponsored by UMBC. So in this episode, I'm a gem. I'm a gem at UMBC, what can I say?
Yes.
I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
There were many, many talented artists and musicians there. What are your thoughts on the music scene in the like DMV area?
People don't really move here to be a musician.
Okay.
But it's very diverse, and you can find fascinating artists to work with.
Okay.
It's just it doesn't make a lot of sense necessarily to go here if you're trying to work with people who will get you attention.
Sure.
They don't have necessarily a ton of attention. But there's great, interesting artists and musicians all over the place. Probably one of the most diverse areas, I think. It's part of why I like being here.
I imagine that people, New York, California, maybe like Atlanta, maybe Chicago, like all these places come to mind. DC is super diverse. I know like Duke Ellington has his like School of Music in DC. Jazz is like a big influence in DC. You play in Baltimore.
Yeah,
I play in DC as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, my main focus now is doing doing online lessons and building this podcast.
Yeah.
Because I've tried different approaches to see like where in music would I fit most naturally.
Okay.
And I just get really bored too fast if I'm like on one project for a long time or just backing up somebody else.
Right.
And so part of the reason I want to do things like this the podcast is because every time I do a collaboration, it can be a completely different
Everything is
thing.
different. Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I have the first collab was like this sort of modern vocal duo thing. It was acoustic guitar and a harmonium, and then the two of us sang together.
That's awesome.
Petite Celine is her name.
Okay.
Fantastic singer, artist, person. And then then I did a John Mayer cover with another friend of mine from back in my church days.
Wow. Okay.
And then I got to do this Beatles and Sting meet Indian classical music, right, with you, which was one of my favorite. It was so fantastic. The next one is like sort of like 90s adult contemporary. There's a guy named Eli Lev who's a songwriter, singer. He's good. That's the next one that's coming out. He's like from Arizona and like lived with a bunch of like Native American people for a while. Wow. Anyway, so like all kinds of interesting stuff. It's just one track, I get to do like, how am I going to support who this guy is about, and stylistically, some stuff I'll know how to do, and some of it I'll have to like work to become good enough to play.
You learn and grow.
And so instead of just always playing guitar for the same person, it's like I get to play all the instruments if I want and solve all these other creative problems, and it's different and new. And there's an angle that's deeper about it. It's not just playing the music. It's also like, who is this person and why? What's driving their expression?
Absolutely.
So it's just way more rich, and it hits all these other things I care about all the time. Anyway,
that's true.
So.
And again, the coolest thing when working with you for that podcast episode when we did the jam session was that because you are such an amazing musician, you were able to pick up so quickly the nuances that define Indian classical music. Like I remember showing you one YouTube video and I explained very quickly like what a sargam is or what a rag is or what a tal is. And you picked it up like instantaneously, and you were jamming, again, $1,000 for a ticket coming up to his next show, performing with the best of the best. But I was very happy to see that. What were your experiences of like jamming with Indian classical music, and what are some like similarities you see in the style of music?
So there's actually a part of why I think I loved doing it was because I also felt a certain amount of a certain connection to it, which was weird. I don't know why. I couldn't pinpoint exactly why at first, but it felt pretty natural. Some music is harder for me to totally connect with, but I think part of it is when I first started playing, I was just making up stuff.
Okay.
And every time you changed the chord, it got more complicated to change around, right? So there was times where I would play basically hanging around the same chord.
Okay.
Well, a lot of Indian classical music is built basically on, in Western terms, on like, there's a drone, right?
Yeah.
That's hanging there. And then you change the notes around the drone, which is your rag.
Yes.
And it's the notes and also how you play them.
Yep.
I don't know exactly the particulars for each rag, how you should approach it technically, but
Sure.
I just know there's a lot of similarities in how basically you're just thinking modally in Western terms.
Modal.
What you're doing is
you're
you're changing the mode that you're playing against that root,
Okay.
right, or against quote drone. And
Yeah.
I'm talking strictly in Western terms because those are the ones I know best.
Yeah.
But they were the ones I knew that would connect and would allow me to play in a way that felt like it was meeting it. So, and there's also a kind of, for me, when I hear that music, there's a kind of longing that I really identify with. You know, like when I hear you sing over that, it just, something about it also sounds like how I want to play.
Hey,
you know?
wow.
So
that's awesome.
So even though I don't have like the same, I didn't grow up playing, you know, in a Indian classical music context, there's enough commonality with certain things that I know I loved. That it didn't take much to sort of find that. I could just focus on, because I knew the modes and I knew kind of harmonically how I could think. So I just thought, well, if I was imitating your voice, what sort of things should I do, like when I bend a string?
Oh my gosh. So it's basically like, how can you, essentially we ended up having a conversation using like our instruments, whether it's like a voice or per tabla or the guitar.
Yes.
And just communicating with each other using those instruments.
Yes.
So it was cool to see like subtly you would like bend a string or like change a note and like we would respond.
Yes.
There was even that, like, it's called jugalbandi, which is like that back and forth communication.
Yeah.
I remember that. That was amazing to see. And to play with a musician like you, man, that was an honor. That was so
Dude,
much
hey,
fun.
it was right back at you, man.
Yeah.
And I always, we actually spent a couple times getting together just talking, because I really wanted to know, a big thing for me is I always love being challenged and growing, and I also really want to respect whatever tradition. If I get a chance to collaborate, I don't want to do something that is disrespectful in any way. I want to show that I really value it. So, and where we ended up felt pretty good. But it took a while, because I was like, I want to make sure I understand how you come to this. And one of the things that you come to music with, especially the Indian classical music tradition that you told me about, was, you know, it's a lot of it comes from this, you know, from the religious space where like you go and you don't call it a service, you call it so we go to Divan. Okay.
Gurudwara. So it's similar to service, but like on Sundays or whenever we actually have the Divan.
Right.
And then we had an entire conversation where we talked about like the beginning to end, what the service is like, the entire like the hymns and all of that that's done.
Yes.
And I appreciated how respectful you were and how interested you were in understanding the context of our music.
Yeah. And so what I wanted to do, actually, I couldn't even get as far as I really wanted to, because I want to really explore that a lot deeper. But the main thing that I came away with from that was that you intentionally choose a rag that is that fits with the text that you want to meditate on during the. I already forgot the name of it. Not the service. The
shabd.
The shabda.
Yeah. So it's like the Guru Granth Sahib Ji within there is a hymn composed in a certain rag.
Okay.
And then the theme of that rag, like whatever the emotions that are built,
Right.
help like enhance the text.
Right. So what I ended up doing was just thinking, well, you know, we needed to find some text we could reflect on. What's something that's meaningful to me, and I think we could find. And you had mentioned that you know, some examples you liked were things like the Beatles doing stuff with Ravi Shankar.
Yeah,
and so
that was
I was
huge.
like, right. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, I love Blackbird. Actually, I really identify with that tune.
Yeah, great
and
song, yeah.
Blackbird basically has a drone in it, right?
Yeah.
That G is held there the whole time.
Entire time.
So cool, that'll be an interesting point. And then, so we were exploring doing that, and then out of the blue, it just felt like I should sing Fragile by Sting over this. For me, that was like my connecting point of the things that I could explore and try to honor that your tradition from my place,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah,
So I was thinking like, well, in a lot of ways I feel like the message in Blackbird, but also, you know, we talked about like when you were a kid, and you wear a turban and everybody thinks you're a terrorist or something, right?
Yeah,
Or like you like
a wild segue, but also very true. Yes,
right?
yes,
Crazy stuff
Yeah,
that's just not, it has nothing to do with you or your tradition, or your religious background or anything, but that's what is perceived. So then it was a big deal for me to then, and Fragile, I'm not totally sure about this, but to me, a lot of it hits on the subject of terrorism especially from a Western point of view, but like the language of it to me sounds like it was written after the two towers came down. Paul Simon, one of my favorites.
Paul Simon,
supposedly he loves this song because he'll often say, or he would say that he would like every time he'd leave New York, that's all he would listen to.
Oh my gosh!
Right, and so because of that, I'm pretty sure I don't really know, but I'm pretty sure that's where it came from.
Yeah.
But the message of it is like you're longing for this space where you can be free of all that anger,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah,
where
of course.
the place where flesh and steel are one, that's no longer, right?
Yeah.
And so it was really cool to then, both of us are singing this stuff, and I'm feeling like I'm really connecting naturally with these, but also, so are you.
Yeah.
And everything about how you approach the music and the longing that I hear in your voice and everything is delivering that same message too, right? It was polar opposite, and it was just like, anyway, that was very meaningful to me. And I
it
felt
was a
like,
lot of fun, man.
Yeah, so that was my best first approach to finding that. And I just want to be able to explore that deeper and actually use the right language for things instead of saying, so in a sick service.
Speaking of language, before I got you on the show, I said that I would give you $1,000 if you knew what GupShup means. And you guessed it correctly, but let's see if you remember. What does GupShup mean?
So what I said was GupShup probably means have a conversation or to hash things out.
It's brilliant. It's wild.
Yeah, it was just my guess. But that's two answers, so I don't know if that counts. But I had to answer twice, so I feel like.
But that was absolutely correct. And then we discussed what would happen if it was GupShup, which I said could be a completely different kind of meaning.
Well, I didn't say GupShup. I'm not that bad. I mean, I'm a white dude, but I'm not that bad. I try hard, man.
Yeah. Speaking of white people, who are some contemporary artists, like nowadays, like modern artists? You're a musician.
Yeah.
Do you connect with any like mainstream artists that you like listening to on the radio? Any top 40, any pop music? Are you into that kind of stuff? And if so, which artists do you like?
Yeah, I have a hard time with most top 40.
Man. Yeah. Why is that?
So I'm actually trying to break into the college market right now, and one of the things you need to do that is to create a video that you can promote to to college booking agents.
Okay.
And that they can use to get students interested and to book you at their shows.
Okay.
So apparently one of the best practices for doing that is to like play one song that's really well known from just a classic, and one that's like a top 40 from like the most recent thing.
Yeah.
So I went through top 40 for the last 2018.
Okay,
basically.
and
It was like, what's the best one I could find? The best one that I could sort of sing was a song called Happier, which is by Marshmello featuring Bastille.
Oh, that's a great song.
So it was like, it was way better than me trying to like, mumble rap or something, right?
Although I would love to see you do it like some version of Cardi B's song Money.
I mean,
Can you imagine?
I have a secret song.
Tune into IGTV behind the scenes episode of Daniel and Gurpreet jamming to.
I mean, because it's you, I would do that with you.
Thank you.
But
is it possible? But there's got to be some artist. Why do you think it's like you don't connect with like mainstream artists? Is it because like they all sell their soul to create a very specific kind of music? Or you're interested in something more?
I think. There's always something interesting and worthwhile to learn about from any music, I think.
Okay.
So it's not like I think it's just all trash.
Okay.
It's not like
it's
that.
It's not that you think it's all trash. Okay.
No.
Okay.
But do I personally connect with it really well? Well, not really, because usually the role of an artist is to help people form their identity and their sense of who they are, really.
Okay. Oh,
I
wow.
think.
Yeah.
So when does that happen? Well, that happens like middle school through college-ish. So obviously that will always continue.
Sure.
But the times when you like really latch on to something
like
then,
who you
which
are,
is why like when as you get older, you still like go back to the same artists
Yeah.
You know, certain ones from there. And it takes a lot more for you to discover a new artist and be really into them.
Yeah, I'm very curious in the
So
future.
I think that happens just for everybody.
Yeah.
And then,
So if that happens to everybody, what happens in the future when the kids that are from middle school to college are just listening to mumble rap? Like, what are your thoughts on the future of music? And like, will people still be interested in like the Beatles or the Paul Simons or like the Stings of the world?
yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I
Okay.
mean, there's always like gems at every age.
Yeah.
And there's lots of crap. And there's, you know, everything's on the continuum.
yeah, okay,
and the
okay.
stuff we will remember is the good stuff, generally speaking.
Who is the gem of like 2018, 2019?
Oh, God.
Like standout artist. If you could award a Grammy to anyone besides yourself and me, who would you give a Grammy to?
Oh, God. I'm not up enough on the music to have a good opinion, so I will refrain.
Fair enough. I know you said that you like performing, but you also do things like teaching. Tell me a little bit about like your, I guess, teaching music, what platforms you use, and how that is coming along.
Yeah. So I was a high school music teacher for 4 years.
Nice.
Got burnt out and wanted to I wanted to still do my own music and art, and I have a tendency to overcommit to other people, and then at my own expense sometimes, I think. So, so I stopped doing that for a while and tried to do my own music. Just didn't want to go back to education at all because I was afraid I would do that same pattern happen. I wouldn't do my own work.
Of course.
But I did have a lot of opinions because of teaching, and I realized the things that I wished existed and were just how people taught. And there's a need for it to be individualized, for education to be individualized, and for it to be clear. And especially in music, it needs to not just start on the page, right? It's a language.
Yeah.
When you first learn a language, you speak just for fun. Like literally, the first language you learn, you just make noise because you like being around everybody else, and everybody loves to hear you try to say stuff.
Yeah.
Right? They don't like, you're not 3 years old saying, you know, whatever gibberish, and having your parents be like, "Man, you suck at
Your
talking."
grammar's very bad.
Right?
Yeah,
What
you're
the
right.
hell?
You're just having
Like,
fun, just
no.
saying words. Yeah.
And you interact, right? You have, it's part of a community context.
I love that, yeah.
That is how you should teach a language,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Music is a language, but how do we teach music usually? Well, we say like, here's a C, ding,
And sheet
here's
music.
right, and it's like, here's the right thing to play and the wrong
And
thing
the
to
wrong
play.
thing, yeah.
And you instill like this almost moral sense of right and wrong and
Oh my
fear
gosh.
from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And then like nobody has a voice at the end because they're so afraid of playing the wrong thing, and they can't even have a conversation.
They can't
the best
express themselves.
The best they can do in most music education is they could stand up with the equivalent of Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech and deliver it and have it sound meaningful, but they would have no clue what it said, and it would mean nothing to them.
And it's not authentic.
It's not theirs.
Oh,
it's just they're just trying to relive and get everybody to remember what he said. That's done now. What do you have to say?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my God, I agree.
So now it doesn't mean that writing is not important.
Sure.
Right? You should learn to write and read.
Yeah.
But if you can't speak and have a conversation, there's no point in writing and reading because there's nothing which you are writing or reading about.
You're not connecting.
It's stupid.
Yeah.
So
when I was in 6th grade, I remember, so we were in orchestra.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember I played the violin. And it was really interesting. Like I think it was like Titanic or like Beauty and the Beast, one of those songs.
Yeah.
And the person who was like the first chair, the best violinist, was playing like the solo piece, and it was amazing. And the rest of us are playing like ba 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 ba. Ba.
Yeah.
And we're just like adding, or like extras, like furniture kind of.
Sure.
And adding some like background music. And when it came to like the like winter Christmas concert, all these parents would come to watch us, and they have to act like they were excited, but we're like, and they're like, "Good job, honey, you're so good. Here's your piece of cheese." Like we were not that good at all. But the problem is we like maybe weren't taught to like love the music or like express ourselves or tell a story. We were more like literally just playing like notes on a sheet of paper. So like what you say makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I think, and then the other thing is like I wanted to do it in a way that felt more manageable and where I felt like I was being paid what actually I should be paid. Like, and I could balance the things that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So online you can do a lot of this stuff, but I wanted to make it way more than just like, hey, let's get on Skype. So I've got a live streaming platform I use which I feed to Google Meet.
Nice.
So it looks like to Google Meet it's a webcam.
Okay.
But I can the visual and audio quality is way better. I have all
Nice.
my instruments plugged in. I can
yeah.
make a keyboard or a guitar neck appear in the screen and have light up whatever I'm playing.
Yeah.
And pull up the notation if I want to show you how to do notation or whatever.
That's crazy.
Record the whole thing so
Yeah.
you can and then I can summarize or whatever. But I can give you a lot of content and have it be, for you, and recorded, and you have it for your whole life if you want.
Man.
Right? And then and teach you then to record in a basic DAW, digital audio workstation for any of you who don't
I had
know.
no idea. I thought you said dog.
No,
without G.
DAW, D-A-W, as in like
D-A-W.
digital audio workstation. So like GarageBand is
Okay.
the most common, well-known one, but
Yes,
there's lots of other things like that. And so the idea is, get these students going, they start writing, and then they should learn to actually like build tracks together.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
be a
man.
session musician, record your track, send your part over to this other student who's going to play their part, and
Yeah.
like here's a chord chart. I want you to approach it in this way. Try to make a song out of it, right? Like
Wow.
So that's the kind of thing I'm building, and I right now they all become my students by joining my Patreon account. So that Patreon community, they can all, if they want to, they can
Yes.
connect with each other. They can talk about the work that I'm putting out there,
Yes.
or that the work that they're doing themselves.
So yeah, if you can tell the listeners and the viewers where they can find you on Patreon. Did you just go
Yes.
like Daniel Roberts? How do they find you?
Oh, excuse me. Wow. One moment.
They can't find you. That's it. That's
Wow. Sometimes you just have a.
he gets very emotional and passionate.
Yeah, especially whenever I have to tell everybody about my Patreon.
I am
It's
qualified
been
as a
so meaningful to me.
I know CPR, so if you want, mouth to mouth.
Oh, no, thank you. I mean, you're a beautiful man, but no. Wow, God.
See, I thought for like 10 seconds it was authentically happening, and then you just kept going, and now your face is as red as your T-shirt. And
Yes.
I'm sorry to worry.
I'm okay.
All right. Welcome back to
my
GupShup.
body, my body just decided to play a trick on me.
After you, sir, yes.
Patreon.com/Daniel John Roberts. John with an H is where you can go.
Okay.
And so I share all of, the collaborations I do, some behind the scenes stuff.
Nice.
And then all of my students, I have them pay through that.
That's awesome. All right, so I'll make
And
sure
the
to...
goal is,
Yes.
and everybody you should all join because it's great and your life will be better. But also, you can be my part of, you can be a student. I take on anybody who's like, any age.
Yeah.
I imagine you don't have to travel anywhere. I'll show up in your phone and then we do the lesson wherever.
That's awesome. Okay, that's really cool.
Yeah, and then I'm hoping to actually that some of my students, will get to the point where they become collaborators with me.
Yeah.
That's I
was
want
gonna
them to
ask you,
practice everything that I'm trying to learn in my
What's
life.
your ultimate goal for the students? And you said you have a wide range of students. I guess people that have very little experience, maybe students that have a lot more experience. But as a teacher, what would you say would be like your defining moment, or like the happiest, or like when you consider yourself successful as a teacher? Like what would that moment be?
When a student successfully makes a statement with their own voice, they say something that is meaningful to them, and they're heard. They feel heard.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have students that are trying to? Do you have students that like mainstream music that do come with pop, and then they probably ask you questions about that?
Oh yeah.
And I guess you're willing to accept students of all backgrounds.
Oh totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll teach any kind of music whenever. There's always something interesting for any type of music style, and if I don't know it, I'll quickly figure it out. Because most of the time, like for instance, if I was going to teach electronic music, I can figure out pretty quickly how to teach that because I know theoretically I'm trained enough that I just need to learn, and I know actually how to use the equipment most people use for that.
Yeah.
I just don't spend my time playing a lot of that music. So, but I could, like, tell me who you like to listen to. There's always endless amounts of music out there. Great, I'll go listen, figure out how how it's constructed. And we'll build it. I'll show you how to do it.
That's amazing. I know I keep asking you about modern day artists. I am curious though. Is there any modern day artists that you would love to perform with?
Yeah.
Cardi B, obviously. But,
Gosh, who would be really interesting to perform with? Well, I guess the thing for me is like there are some people. Probably Lady Gaga would be very interesting.
Okay.
I've always been a big fan of Coldplay. They're not really. I mean, they're still well known.
Yeah.
I feel like their biggest heyday was not now, but they're still big. I love them.
Have you ever been to a Coldplay concert? So I went with my siblings in New Jersey.
Cool.
They have things like I don't know, pyrotechnics or like whatever it is, but like the concert is a lot more than just the music, and then it turned into like an entire experience.
Yeah.
So that thing is really cool.
Yeah.
Do you, obviously someone who's interested in music, have you gone to music concerts, and do you enjoy that kind of stuff as well?
I do, because I love playing and the experience of that. It's very often the case that if I'm sitting in the audience,
Yes.
it feels less. I feel less connected than if I am playing with the musician. So
Yeah.
I often feel almost like I'm sitting in the wrong place.
Okay.
Like I really want to be on the stage, even if I'm not. Like I don't think I fit there, but like man, it's like
You could see yourself connecting more when you're performing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
it means it depends on the music too.
Sure.
If it's something that's really new to me, then no, I want to sit in the audience and just take it in.
Okay. Yeah.
But if it's something where like it's a vocabulary that I really know, then I just have a desire to be like closer and more connected to that, and so I'd rather be in the band.
That makes sense.
Also, musicians, I think musicians are generally don't make as much money,
Yeah.
so they actually don't go to as many concerts. Like they'll play the concerts, but they don't actually go.
Yeah. That's
Listen,
interesting, right? Yeah.
The ones that are really serious about it. So, but yeah, there's a couple I've gone to that I really liked. I saw Paul Simon and Sting and Peter Gabriel. I've seen those three.
Oh my God, yeah.
And there's others I'd love to see. U2 was a big thing for me for quite a while, and that was mainly because they're like, in the world of Christian contemporary music and church music, they're like the gods of that. Basically, every worship band really just wants to be U2.
Wants to be too. And the cool thing with all the artists you mentioned is that they do have a global platform where people of like all different backgrounds and countries love their music, and it's probably because it's so universal. They connect well in that context. You mentioned Lady Gaga. Do you also does your art stem? Obviously, it stems from music, but do you also enjoy other aspects of art? Like, do you enjoy movies or plays, poetry?
Oh, I forgot to mention John Mayer, because every guitarist wants to be John Mayer.
Oh, dude, I saw a concert with John Mayer. I think it was like Lollapalooza, and he's like playing his classic like Gravity solo for like 5 minutes, like backwards guitar.
Yeah.
A wild performer. But there was one with him and BB King,
Yes.
and they're just having like back and forth guitar, and I was mind blown. That's incredible.
Yeah. Dude, yeah. I mean, the thing is like, if artists keep really playing, artists kind of age like wine.
Yeah.
Right? Like they are actually better as they get older.
Crazy.
In a lot of ways to me. So that's the other reason why, if I had a choice, well, no, I'd want to play with somebody who's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Because it would feel like this deep honor, and I get to experience, playing with somebody who's done this with their life, and
Of course, yeah.
their music has become, has been loaded up with so many people's baggage from all of their lives.
Absolutely, yeah. So you mentioned you do have an interest in things like movies
Oh,
or
yeah.
poetry. What's the most recent movie that you saw?
Most recent movie I saw, it was Vice, the new movie about, oh gosh, what's his name? Christian Bale plays, who was George Bush's,
This is
Dick Cheney.
Dick Cheney, the vice president.
Yes,
Yeah, the vice
Dick
president.
Cheney.
I heard that's incredible.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man,
It's amazing performances too. Like, it's unbelievable. You would never know that it's Christian Bale unless you're told
Christian
that it's
Bale.
Christian Bale.
Christian Bale is someone who like alters, like he's a method actor. I guess, I don't know. Maybe he's not, but he changes his body in like every movie.
Dude,
did you see like if you type in like Christian Bale like body transformation, he goes from like super skinny to like super jacked to like.
Yeah, unbelievable, man. I mean, I only knew him from the Batman movies.
Yeah, same.
The Christopher Nolan stuff, which I love also.
Of course.
But I was just blown away. Just that's the first reason I wanted to see it was just because it was like, whoa, this is just an amazing feat of acting. And then it was also actually just a fantastic portrayal, I thought.
Yeah. Do you gravitate towards movies, or like when you're watching a movie, do you ever end up focusing on the soundtrack or like getting immersed in the musicality of a movie at all? Like Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper's newest movie.
Oh, right. Which I haven't seen yet. I should see.
I haven't
Star
seen
is
it either.
Born.
Star is Born, yeah. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be like the defining like love story of our generation or something.
Wow. Yeah. It's supposed to be really fantastic. I think all of us do. I don't get caught up in that over the story.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I think just turn off the audio from a movie and then try to watch it, and you'll realize how much of what you're feeling has nothing to do with the acting or anything. It's
the music.
It's the music.
I do that for horror movies. Because they scare the crap out of me. And so when I turn the volume off, naturally I'm not afraid of a ghost.
Right.
Or like have you seen It with the clown?
No.
Do you like horror movies?
Not really.
All
I mean, I like suspense and thriller, but
Yeah.
horror, not so much. The closest thing is Stanley Kubrick. I like some of his stuff.
Okay.
I haven't seen all of his. I still have not been courageous enough to watch Clockwork Orange.
Oh, dude, that's supposed to be insane.
Dude,
I haven't seen
that
it.
sounds like a...
But thrillers, do you like things like Black Mirror as a TV show, or
Yeah.
You, those kind of shows?
Mm-hmm.
Man, Black Mirror is a wild one.
Yeah, totally. I only saw the most recent one, the Bandersnatch.
Yeah, the movie. Yeah,
The one
you
where
have to
you-
like pick your own destiny.
Yeah, but that was cool. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. What about Game of Thrones?
I only watched like the first, like a couple of episodes from the first season, and it was during my time teaching when I was so stressed out and upset about so many stupid political things that were power plays and stuff. Anyway,
Oh, really? Yeah.
that it was then like it just added to my general depression about life because
God.
I was like, great, this king that I love also got killed at the end of my day teaching bratty children with incompetent
as if something
administrators.
else had to go wrong.
I don't want to
Ned
hear
Stark
about
is
another
dead.
thing that went wrong.
It's the worst, man.
Yeah, things are better now, so I may really enjoy.
But you're not
watching
all
now,
caught
but-
up though, right? I mean.
Oh no, I haven't seen.
Holy shit.
No, I've seen some of the stuff from like the first season, and I saw one episode from a later season. I don't remember much. That's it.
The show is really wild. Everything is obviously like fiction. Like none of it is like, come on, like dragons. I never thought I'd get into like super sci-fi kind of stuff. I'm obviously like the biggest Harry Potter fan. But what drew me to Game of Thrones was actually their soundtrack. Like the beginning, bum, 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 bum.
Yeah.
It's because like there are like there's a rag. There's like an Indian classical. There's a rag to that, and if you go on YouTube, you can actually see this like Indian classical composition of that tune that was like remixed to create that.
Yeah,
It was wild.
that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything has a rag, basically. I mean, it's just a different way to think about music, but it's a scale and a rag are very similar.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Daniel, any final things that you want to tell our listeners back at home, our viewers back at home?
Everybody should follow Gurpreet Sarin everywhere.
And wait, you like physically? You're gonna follow people?
No, don't like stalk him. That would be.
Someone created a fake profile of me. It was Gurpreet.Sarin. They had a picture of me and Nature, my fiance, on their profile. I like blocked that shit immediately, and they took it off Instagram. But yeah, don't follow that advice. Yeah,
Dude.
It was flattering, but it's also like,
Whoa.
yeah.
That hasn't happened to me yet.
Oh,
Yeah.
maybe after this episode.
It could. You never know, man. I
Yeah.
mean, I think I would have the same reaction as you. I would be, I would be conflicted and slightly feel a little bit violated, probably.
It's a weird position.
I would expect is how you felt, right?
Daniel, it's been a pleasure chatting with you about
You
life,
as well,
liberty,
man.
and the pursuit of happiness. Check him out on Patreon.
Yep, patreon.com/Daniel John Roberts.
And I'll
be a
post-
student if you want, come join the revolution.
Absolutely. You should
And
be.
or my podcast, Unmake My Enemy.
Of course. And your podcast, Unmake My Enemy. And I'll post the links to all of that in the YouTube description below.
Yeah.
Thank you again for tuning in to another episode of GupShup with Gurpreet Sarin. And I will see you next week. What's going on? Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of GupShup with Gurpreet Sarin. If you like this episode, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Also, keep your eye out for next week's episode. We'll have episodes every Wednesday. Now, the audio of this will be tuned in on Spotify podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. So make sure to check those out as well. Final feature, IGTV. This shit is a game changer. So make sure you check that out. We got the studio behind the scenes, me interacting with my guests, and some exclusive creative content for you. Thank you so much again, and I will see you next Wednesday.